Hey there, lady. My name is Molly Conley, and I'm devoted to helping women reinvent their love lives, whether that's after divorce, dating on and off the apps, or in their committed relationship. Why? Because I've been there. I'm a former college athlete who filed for divorce 3 years into marriage, swam in the online dating pool into my late 30s, and now I am married to the man of my spreadsheet dreams who I met 4 months before the world shut down. As a dating and relationship coach, I help my clients shift the focus from being obsessed with finding Mr. Right to shifting to herself as Miss Right Now. We build a foundation filled with clarity, connection, and confidence, knowing she is worth waiting for. Each week on the podcast, I'll bring you love life insights and savvy guests, where you will receive the courage to release programmed limiting beliefs. Discover patterns and behaviors restricting you from finding and attracting quality men, and ways to choose yourself first so you can build a foundation for a healthy relationship with yourself and a partner. Why, hello there, lady. Thank you again for joining me for another episode on Reinventing the Arena podcast. So, within the last 6 months, I've recognized a pattern with a few clients who are dissatisfied with their love lives in a variety of ways, whether that's dating or relationships, current, past, or whatnot, and how it's associated with the amount of romance, like romance media, that they consume. So I'm curious if this could be impacting you as well. So, what we consume consumes us. What we watch, especially as children, it teaches us in so many ways what success looks like, how to behave in certain situations, how to make friends. And what we watch, whether it's a TV series, movies, or even videos on TikTok or Instagram, all play a part in crafting our so-called reality in our lives. Yet, do you know if it's affecting who you date and what you allow in your relationships? If not, I'm going to get into this today. I found quite a few sources that brought up a variety of information, some that I honestly wasn't expecting. So please be prepared that part of this episode, at the end especially, is going to be a bit heavy. With that said, the younger we start consuming media, and this can even include books, so like movies, music, news, social media, the more of an impact it will have on our beliefs and our actions for women and men. Any form of media can inspire us, right? But it can become, harmful or troublesome when we start to apply the hypothetical lessons within the fictional content as a reference for what to expect in our so-called real life. So those movies, the TV series, TikTok videos, books, all that, like I mentioned, if you consume it over and over again, where the theme is really similar, it has the potential to alter your sense of reality by skewing your expectations and triggering certain emotions within you. But what what does this have to do with, your dating experiences, your relationships, your love life? Well, one of the sources I pulled was an article from the University of Berkeley, California, and it stated frequent viewers of romantic media content are less likely to believe that they can change themselves or their relationship. They are also more likely to believe that their partner should intuitively understand their needs, and they are more likely to believe that sex should be perfect. And get this, they also report a lower relationship satisfaction. And I'll be honest, I was there in this area after my divorce. So, for example, I thought watching romantic comedies would help me when I was thinking about reaching back to my, ex, whether it was my ex-husband or an ex-boyfriend, because the man in the movie would be hypothetically so much better than my ex in God knows how many ways. And I would take that information as proof that there were men out there, like better men than my ex-husband out there for me, just not in my town. Now, let's say you don't have much experience with dating or being in a relationship or even with having sex. People who are in this boat end up using romantic media content and porn to learn what to do in these situations. So, with watching movies, especially when it's fast paced, intense, and very vivid, and when the characters are relatable within that romantic media content, people end up subconsciously or consciously collecting data as, like cues to determine other people's cues on intimacy and romantic satisfaction. This is contributed to something called cultivation theory, which was developed in 1976 by Gerbner and Gross. They say assembled media pieces curate and play a direct role in the beliefs and principles that viewers develop over time because of their familiar elements. So, of course, this explains why many women are not satisfied with their potential partner or their relationships. So, in fact, this one research paper that I'm going to be talking about in length and citing here, it actually got published this year, says that this sort of research and this sort of findings can go back as far as 1920, which means your mom, possibly your grandmother, more than likely created their perceptions and beliefs of what a good, healthy relationship looked like from news, movies, books, and TV series. So, what issues do I see with my clients when it comes to this sort of overlap of romantic media and the dissatisfaction in relationships? Well, first and foremost, the easiest one to spot. First and foremost, the easiest one to spot is the comparison issues. So, as of now, we really want to blame this on social media, but this has been going on for way longer than that. So, I remember a classmate, I think I was in eighth or ninth grade, who loved Rachel from Friends, even though she looked nothing like Rachel. She got the Rachel haircut. And if you are around my age, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And thought that someday she will marry a quote unquote Ross. And this happens to men too, because my ex boyfriend, the one that I dated like the last person I dated before I met Brad, he loved The Office and he hoped to marry a Pam one day. And I'm like, I'm not fucking anything like Pam. So it was pretty evident that this wasn't going to work out. So I'm not the type of person, and I'm just really honest here, who watches a lot of TV. I never grew up really watching a lot of movies either. I was an athlete. I didn't really have time just because I was studying and competing all the time and training. So it's sometimes disturbing to hear how people can suck themselves into shows so deeply that they start trying to find their person who is based off a script someone has been acting out. So, within the research paper I just briefly talked about, it cited additional researchers found 5 themes when analyzing romantic comedies. Number 1, the soulmate. Number 2, your one and only, which, those two probably could just go together. Number 3, the perfect character who obviously has no flaws and is considered your ideal partner. Number 4, the saying, love conquers all. Yeah. Basically saying that love is all you need in a relationship, which we all know is a bunch of bullshit. Number 5, love at first sight, where hypothetically love happens immediately. Those researchers and ones before them agreed that individuals who are more exposed to popular romantic media will have more dysfunctional and unrealistic beliefs about intimate partner relationships. So this leads into my second issue, which is unrealistic expectations on a partner or a relationship. So, no matter how much you love your TV series or your movies, disconnecting from them is still important. Like, all media content gives us an experience, right? And it's up to you to pull yourself away from the so called entertainment and not make it part of your reality, not part of your story. It's the same with social media. You're viewing the perfect couple who, goes on these lavish trips, drinking champagne on yachts, getting that most amazing tan or whatever. It's obviously going to make your life seem boring as hell or even just less interesting, right? I don't show the everyday mundane life of Brad and I, like, not just because I don't think people care or don't care, excuse me, but I completely forget to even show it. Now, if you want to see Brad and I grocery shopping, cleaning, or working, I guess you just need to tell me and I can do that. But it's not always going to be these romantic moments where we're making dinner together or he's cleaning the dishes and I'm just so excited about that. No, like that's no. I'm like, thank God we're cleaning together. Like that is really what I'm thinking, right? But it's just a realistic viewpoint of what our marriage looks like, which might be different than what other people's marriages look like. I will say that we don't argue or fight much, but I know that he would be upset if I would decide to record that for any reason. But yeah. So, anyways, back to the episode here. So, expectations. They can look like, you being disappointed that your partner or someone you're dating isn't buying you flowers or gifts. It could even be like this one's great. In my head, I'm thinking it's like also not getting that mixtape that you might have wanted back in high school or even college. Like, I never got one of those. And I always was so envious of my friends that did. Maybe Brad will listen to this and make me like a playlist because I'm horrible at making playlists. But they can also look like what we think relationships should look like, right? Like we should always be together, even when we're dating, day in and day out. They should spend the night, or you should spend the night there. Men should be giving you tons of compliments, like sweeping you off your feet, that sort of thing. When in reality, dating and relationships are a lot messier than we can imagine. And as we get older and we have more of these experiences of the messiness of dating and relationships, we can start to decipher not only what we want, but what we believe is true in our current or future relationships. Okay, so the final issue I see, and this is the one that I hinted at before, there are some triggering language or situations that might not be suitable for you. Obviously, you can decide to continue listening, or you can skip ahead to the end where I share some tips to get out of these issues. So, the final issue and the biggest issue is how romantic media portrays harmful behavior as romantic relationships. So, when a man cannot contain his love for you, it's time to pay attention. You need to observe his behavior. This includes, but is not limited to, him being obsessed with you. Romantic media content makes it seem wonderful when the man is constantly texting you, showing up at your home or your workplace, sending you gifts after gifts, wanting to spend all your free time with them and him only type of thing. These are red flags. These are not, I will repeat, these are not romantic gestures. Because the way men are portrayed in movies, this has become increasingly hyper masculine, and it can be damaging to young adults when you start viewing it. Because, like, think back, like maybe as a teenager, early 20s, like if you were viewing things like this, you would think this is how relationships work, that he should be pursuing you like this. So thinking that this hyper aggressive behavior within a relationship turns it into this idea of like being extra romantic. But I'm saying that this includes stalking, as like the entry point into this whole situation. So I'm going to read you part of this research paper. This trope has led to a romanticizing stalking, which is considered the ultimate persistent pursuit and is evidence of love, which can be harmful if young adults believe that stalking behaviors are appropriate and acceptable. It was found that exposure to film that portrayed persistent pursuit as romantic was associated with higher levels of stalking myth endorsement. I didn't get into that part, but you can get the drift. You don't want a man to be obsessed with you. All right. So, like in my recent Sunday email, I shared that I had been on some scary first or even third dates in my life, but I didn't share about them. So, in college, I think I might have been a senior. I had an argument with my boyfriend and I went out with my friends. He broke into my apartment, found an old box filled with books and childhood journals, only to proceed to ask me who the hell was Josh, which was who I was fucking in love with as a 9-year-old. I'm not going to kid you, he read that from my fucking diary. Like, what? Are you kidding me? He was fucking psycho. So we obviously called it quits, but I'm not done. I have another one here for you. So that next year, I met a man at a concert. We exchanged numbers and we went on 2 dates. Everything was great. Liked him a lot. The third date, so sad. He confessed his love for me. I was so confused. And he said that he wanted to get married. And he even talked to his mom about it, which she completely approved. And I had never met her. Supposedly, she did. So obviously, I thought he was nuts. And I backed out of the relationship. Not only did he show up to my waitressing job, but he broke into my car somehow without me knowing, without the alarm going off, without breaking a window, nothing, to leave me a note on my steering wheel. He followed me home and knocked on my door until I threatened to call the cops. Because I didn't know where he lived, I couldn't get a restraining order. Ladies, this shit is not romantic. It is scary. And there's more. This research paper has a lot of good information, and so I'm obviously going to be including this in the show notes. It's about 13 pages long if you want to go through the whole thing. So I'm going to read some of the paragraphs from this paper, and they might not be in the correct order from within the paper, though. So I pulled things that I was like, this works within the format of what I'm talking about on the episode. Repeated exposure of not only unrealistic portrayals of intimacy and romance, but also harmful depictions of romanticization of hypermasculinity, hyperaggression, intimate partner aggression, stalking, and neglect of consent can shape and ultimately desensitize viewers' beliefs on what an appropriate relationship looks like within society. Next. Romantic ideals within movies can lead to damaging mentalities that take the ideals one step too far, turning them into dangerous behaviors. Harmful phenomena such as romanticizing of intimate partner violence, stalking, and viewings of disregarding for consent have been prevalent in movies. These have become increasingly prevalent themes within films and have been expressed in a positive light. So think of the last romantic movie where you watch a woman, run away in tears, and the man runs up to her, pushes her against the wall, and kisses her. That is hypermasculinity, that is hyperaggression, and that's negligence of consent. And we have all watched scenes like this before. It is not romantic. It is not a healthy way to apologize or create intimacy. Now, you probably can start to see how these quick scenes have been in your consumption for as long as you can remember. All right, the next part, this is going to be related to sexual consent. So if you need to move forward or past this point, please do so. I'm going to read parts of the research paper again. The researcher included a 2006 study on how sexual consent was displayed in films and noticed overwhelmingly the appropriate consent was rarely portrayed. A non consensual sex code was designed for instances where the coder perceived at least one character did not agree to, was forced into, or was coerced into sexual behavior, and that included refusing to abide by someone not consenting or refusing. The researchers found that nonverbal cues, both explicit and implicit, dominated consent depictions in mainstream films, which perpetuates confusion on what is appropriate for gaining consent from others. In 2019, a different researcher studied college students and reported their beliefs and attitudes around consent was being consistent with nonverbal cues that films show as the most common cues college students report using to communicate consent, which were consistent with the nonverbal cues that they watched with the characters using those within the films. This researcher also observed that in movies, consent was sometimes seen as irrelevant to include because the audience just knows when a character is consenting. This is harmful because if young adults are trying to learn through watching films, they're not being exposed to how consent should work and therefore are not learning what appropriate consent should entail. Last but not least, another group of researchers from 2006 found that their results indicated that men prefer films with sex and violence significantly more than women do, whereas women prefer love stories significantly more than men do, which could lead to relationship abuse if the repeated exposure of those films contribute to one's attitudes about relationships, as the authors have it concluded. This is a lot to absorb. Like, this is a lot. And it explains so much about the differences of behaviors between genders in relationship and how we, even as women, perceive love, what portrays love, where our expectations come from. And I talk about this a lot in depth of like what you consume consumes you, and also what you associate, not just your friends and family, but like all of that, where you learn things from becomes your belief systems, your assumptions, all of it. And these are things that you have to get through that are not real, and in order for you to create a different reality that is safe for you as well as realistic. So, how can we do this? Number one, review your consumption. How often are you watching romantic movies? Anything from, even just watching your friends' reels from weddings. How often do you read romantic novels? How often do you fantasize about the relationship you want? How often are you watching sexual content like porn? Number two, ask yourself, what does the consumption give you? Does it give you hope? Is it inspiring? Or does it just turn you on? Number three, review your expectations of a partner, of your love life, of your ideal first date, and even of your wedding. Did this come from romantic media content? Did this come from your parents? Like, really pull that out. Number four, reduce the amount of consumption of romantic anything. Number five, set real life expectations around a first date, a relationship, a marriage, and craft your love life vision. I know that that's a lot. It's going to take a lot of time, in a sense, for you to sit down, pull this stuff out of you, do some journaling, really reflect. But it's important, especially if you are catching yourself really having these sort of issues in your dating experiences or your relationships, current or past. So if this sounds like something you do want to dig into and create for yourself, please join my email list. I am creating something special that I have typically done with my one-on-one clients, and my email list is going to get first dibs. Now, you can get on my email list in a few different ways. You can click the link in the show notes and you can take my 16-question quiz to figure out what's sabotaging your love life, or you can go to my website and sign up for Lady Love Lessons at the bottom of my homepage. Okay, lady, that's all that I have for you today. I shouldn't even say that's all. Like, that's a lot, obviously, to go through. But you know what? This is being released on a Thursday. And if you get to listen to it in time, you can work on this on the weekend. Yeah, that sounds like fun, right? But make sure to tune in next week as I have a very special guest joining me. It is a former coach of mine, and she's joining me on Tuesday. This one's going to be good. I think we recorded for over an hour. So buckle up. It's going to be really fun. It's yeah, I love it. But then on Thursday I'm going to have another solo episode. If you want, so you don't miss out on any of these, hit that follow or subscribe button so it saves to your library within your ideal podcast app. All right, lady, have a wonderful weekend and I will talk to you soon.